We are coming to you this week from the Department of Education's Townsend Building here in Dover. And our first person this week is the Education Secretary, Dr. Lillian Lowry. Dr. Lowry, thank you so much for being with FIRST this week.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Lowry, last week we had the DCAS results come out, and DCAS is Delaware Comprehensive Assessment System. That replaced the old testing program, which was more pen and pencil, pen and paper format. The results were kind of hit or miss. You know, you had about 60% of students meeting, on average, math and reading proficiency levels. Are you satisfied with those numbers?
Well, I'll never be satisfied until 100% of our children are proficient, but we were pleased because if one would recall, the governor put on a road show when we first raised the standard setting scores for our new assessment, and we raised the bar. We looked at the old DSTP and how low we had set the bar for proficiency in standard setting, and juxtaposed that beside NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the nation's report card, and PISA, the international standards and assessments. So we had groups of teachers, over 150 teachers, looking at these data, and then we set our proficiency levels. And I will tell you, they are much higher. When we were out on the road show with the governor, we were saying that, for example, in fourth grade reading, the scores would drop by 48%. And so for our students, and our teachers have worked really hard, so we knew that there would be a decline because we raised the bar. And as the governor said on his roadshow, it doesn't mean that our children are learning less, it means we're demanding more so that they are college and career ready at the end of 12th grade. So are we happy about all of our students not being proficient? Absolutely not. But are we pleased that our teachers and our students worked really hard to hit a higher score than we thought? We certainly are. It means they're working hard.
Now, science in that category, slightly less,
right,
about 40%.
Yes.
What needs to be done to elevate those numbers?
Okay. Let me talk to you about science. And I had this discussion with Linda Rogers, who is our Associate Secretary for Teaching and Learning, under whose responsibility comes assessment. We changed the social studies and science grades from previous years because we wanted to minimize the testing within a grade. So one of the reasons that the science and social studies scores, science in particular, were probably lower than usual is because we moved them to a different grade. So it's a different curriculum and different teachers. What are we going to do? We are so pleased that we now have a new assessment that you to which you refer, the DCAS, where our students and teachers can actually intermittently test throughout the year and get formative data and see where children are learning and growing and see where children are not learning and growing. And then in professional learning communities with their peers, they can adjust their teaching strategies and their focus throughout the year and adjust for that. So we're really pleased that we now have a web-based adaptive assessment that not only allows us to see what our children know and are able to do, but gives us check-ins on them throughout the year so we can adjust instruction.
And DCAS will occur 3 times a year, is that
Four.
correct? Four times a year?
This year, 3 because it was a pilot year and we had to get it up and running, but now going forth it will be 4 times a year.
Is it a concern that teachers will only try to cater to the test? Do you know what I mean? So they can meet the standards of the test and alter their teaching to meet those goals?
So this is probably not the answer one would expect to get, but I hope so, because we think in adopting the Common Core standards that we have the right standards and that we have the right rigor in each grade level for what students should know and be able to do. So let me tell you, if our teachers are teaching to the test, that means they're teaching to the standards, and that's exactly what we want them to do.
Okay, let's talk about Race to the Top. Data Coaches, which is part of where some of the Race to the Top funding went to, they will help these teachers kind of analyze the DCAS scores. Is that correct?
This is an amazing amount of work, and having 4 different assessments, and DCAS is only one indicator of success. We will be using other indicators just as a check and balance. And I taught for many years, and I got along well with my colleagues, and we enjoyed certain things, but we never really sat down and planned together, or we never really exchanged profusely assessments or strategies that we were using. What Race to the Top allows with these data coaches is for all the 3rd grade teachers, for example, to come together in a school and talk about areas of strength, areas of weaknesses, and share strategies, materials, and opportunities with each other. So we think the data coach will be wonderful, and not only will data coaches be looking at academic data, they will be looking at attendance data, discipline data, all of those things that really do or do not impact how successful a child will be.
And how about spending in the second year now of the program, the federal grant program, Race to the Top? How do you think it's going?
Well, one of the things we did last year was went through a change management process, because after we wrote the application processes, each district had 90 days to come up with this grand plan for 4 years. A little unrealistic. So we did that though. We got them in, but asked, give us another year to really go through, look at the data, look at root cause analyses, and come up with really great plans. Not good plans, but great plans. So we did a lot of that over the year. However, we did pilot the data coach, for example, in 6 districts and 1 charter school, and it was great because we saw what things were going to work the way we thought they were going to work. We saw, oops, that's not working exactly how we thought it would, so we could modify before we put them statewide. We feel like we're in a good place because we feel like we have worked with districts and schools to really look at data closely and determine where the best bang for our buck will be, where our students will grow most with most help.
When you're out speaking with parents, do you hear them say things like, what can we do to better public schools, or Delaware public schools are really struggling? I mean, do you still hear that?
Oh, absolutely, because if you look at our science scores, 40% are proficient. So there are always areas of improvement. And by the way, that is one great thing about Delaware. No matter where I go, it's not just public schools and public school parents. When I go speak to the Academy for Lifelong Learning at the University of Delaware with all these wonderfully retired people, they are asking how can we help. When we speak to the American Association of University Women, who are a lot of retired scientists, especially for women in STEM courses, everyone wants to help. The good thing about Race to the Top in the governor's reform plan is this is a statewide endeavor, and we feel it everywhere we go.
Okay, I want to talk about the charter schools in particular. Last week we were here
Right.
inside this very room
Right.
talking about Reach Academy for Girls and Penn-Cater Charter High School, and they were at risk of having to close down and lose their charters, but they are now on probation.
Right.
They've kind of got the second chance. Should other charters kind of be on alert in that maybe there may be more state oversight to prevent problems like Reach and Penn-Cater and what happened at those 2 charter schools?
Yes, and I think we first rang that bell when we created the partnership zone schools, because I don't think charters thought they were a part of the statewide initiative initially. And Positive Outcomes Charter was one of the first 4 originating partnership zone schools, the 5% lowest achieving schools. And I will tell you, and I am so proud of the other schools, they are really getting it right. It was kind of taking them aback when they first found out, but I am telling you, if you go on their website, they are doing some of the most creative, visionary work of any of our schools in reform. So that was the first bell that was rung, as when a charter school was actually put in the partnership zone. And then secondly, and I want people to understand this, sometimes we can cut off our nose to spite our faces. Reach Academy and Penn-Cater, with historical data, are improving academically. So do we really want to uproot those students when their parents and the students feel that they're in a good place that fits them? And that's what charter schools are all about, a unique opportunity for families and children. Do we want to really uproot them if we could find a way to come to some agreement with a lot of oversight? So that's not just a bell that we are ringing around. Charter schools are going to be under more oversight. It was rung over at Legislative Hall. We now have code that says certain things must happen from the department and among our charter schools to be accountable fiscally and academically for these children.
And you mentioned partnership zone schools.
Yes.
There are 4 now. These are, like you said, the lowest performing schools academically. We're adding more to that list.
At the end of the day, we will have 10, because it's supposed to be in each state 5% of a state's lowest achieving schools. We were only supposed to do 3 initially, but when we chose Positive Outcomes and they had such a small number of students, we decided to do 4. So in September, we will name 6 more schools.
And once those schools are named, what happens next?
The same process that we went through. They will have 120 days. The governance team, and that would be the superintendent or head of school and their boards, have to choose one of the 4 models: school closure, school restart, close it and restart as a magnet or charter, school turnaround, which means get in a new leader and then revise the planning for the school, or that's transformation, new leader transforming the school. And turnaround is at least 50% of the staff, including the principal, has to be turned over. And so once a governance team chooses that, then at the charter level, they're good to go. At the district level, then they have to meet with their union representatives and make sure that they agree to the model going forward. And they have 120 days to give us the model that they've chosen collaboratively and the plan that they're going to use to actually reform the schools.
And then when they have that model in place, what will be expected of those partnerships?
In 2 years, they're supposed to show significant growth in 2 years. And we give those schools up to $700,000 more per year. They still get all their federal, state, local funds, and then up to $700,000 more per year to be really creative. We monitor very closely. Noreen LaSorsa leads the state turnaround unit, and her staff are in there every month checking on them, looking at the data. They have to come up with a plan with projected targets that they must meet year over year, and we're not waiting to the end of the year and say, oops, you didn't meet your target. We are in there every month checking in to make sure they're on the right path, and if they're not, then we infuse interventions where we need to.
Okay. Now, as Education Secretary, any challenges come up over and over again that you're kind of running into repeatedly, or any surprises so far?
I'm not surprised. Planning is easy, and so when we're planning, first of all, when one puts out theoretical concepts about improving schools, who can argue with those theoretical concepts? It makes sense, it's research-based. Writing a plan is fun, it's interesting, we get everybody together, we get to think creatively, be visionaries. Implementing the plan, another story. It's like, oh, the plan that we wrote, we're really going to do that? Yes, we really have to do that in order for our children to show improvement. So it is not a surprise. Implementation of change is always a challenge. But so far, in Delaware, everyone has stayed at the table. When we agree, we agree. When we disagree, we agree to disagree. But so far, we have kept the child at the forefront of every decision we've made, every conversation we've had, and we're moving in the right direction.
Now, you've come from the schools. Do
Yes.
you feel that helps you when, do you have a hard time reconciling this planning and theory and then knowing what it's actually like to be in the classrooms, in the schools?
Absolutely, and most of my staff around me have come from schools too. They've been teachers, they've been principals at district office level. And so there are times when we have to look around at each other around the table and say, that's the way we're thinking at DOE. How does that really impact people at the school level? If we do this, what does this mean for a principal? What does this mean for a classroom teacher? What does this mean for a paraprofessional? What does it mean for our students? So it's always good to have that experience sitting around the table of someone who's actually walked in their shoes.